Well, hello, everybody. Glad to have you back. Today, we're going to be talking about two different concepts that, while they overlap a little bit, there's still some pretty significant differences. We're going to be talking about the difference between emotional numbness and dissociation. I know you've probably heard me in this podcast talk about how I have a very dissociative tendency. So basically, when things get rough, when things get tough, I check out. But that's totally different than being emotionally numb, which at one point I was that too. And that is what kind of prompted me to have this discussion because a lot of people don't know the difference, or they think there isn't a difference, or they think they're dissociating when they're actually just an emotionally numb, or the rather. So I just wanted to kind of come on here and clear it up a little bit, some of the scientific or the technical terms and the differences, so that you can maybe ask yourself, which one are you, or which one is someone that you love, so that you can maybe help them come to terms with it and help help become a more emotionally non-numb, if that's a word. I don't even know if that's a word. So to start to feel their emotions and start to really get a grasp on their emotions. And that's really what we need to do. We are, as children of dysfunction and chaotic families, we had such a tendency to stifle our feelings that now, maybe sometimes decades later, we don't even have feelings. We don't even know what it means to feel because we're so used to suppressing them. So, first, I want to go over some of the differences between emotional numbness and dissociation. And if you want to hear a lot more about dissociation and actually somebody's specific story about dissociative amnesia, go back and listen to episode 28. Nathan Segal comes on and he talks all about his experience with a 13-year dissociative amnesia period. So, literally, he had no memory for 13 years of who he was. So this is the extreme case, of course, but today I'm going to talk more general terms. So in focus, so when you have emotional numbness, you lack the emotional experience. So you don't feel the emotions. So if someone says to you, Tammy, you're such a butthead, I'm like, okay. I literally would not get angry. I wouldn't get sad. My feelings wouldn't get hurt. I just didn't care. I didn't feel anything if someone hurt my feelings. Where when the bad things or the really bad things were happening to me, I could literally stand outside my body and watch it happening. So, yes, while there was no emotional feeling behind what was happening, I was literally kind of disconnected and outside of my body, or so I thought. The symptoms, when you have emotional numbness, you just basically have a flat affect. I mean, you just don't have feelings, like I mentioned. And you can kind of ask yourself, if your husband or somebody that you really cared about did something horrible or cheated on you or said something mean or condescending to you, would you have that like gut feeling of ouch, that hurt, or and then get sad or mad or angry? Or would you just kind of let it blow over? Because for years, people could say, do, and talk to me any way they wanted. And I really didn't get mad or upset or sad. I remember my therapist asking me, how does that make you feel? And I'm like, I don't feel. I literally didn't feel for the longest time. But when you dissociate, you literally have memory gaps. You don't remember what's going on. You have like a derealization or a depersonalization from yourself. So you literally don't know it's even happening to you. And then there's also, when they talk about the differences between emotional numbness and dissociation, there's a severity difference. So usually the emotional numbness is not quite as severe. Yes, you might not have any experience with emotions. You might not feel the anger, feel the sad, feel the joy, feel the happiness. But when you actually are dissociating, and these stages can go from mild, which is just literally scrolling on your phone and just blocking out what's coming at you so you don't hear anything going on around you, or it could go all the way to the severe, which is in Nathan Siegel's case on episode 28, is a complete break to where you don't know what's going on. So he, like I said, he was out for 13 years. He had a dissociative amnesia and he did not remember his family. He was writing books. He was literally living another life, but he wasn't aware of it. So that's your most extreme case. So another one is the awareness case. So when you have the emotional numbness, you are aware that you're being numb. So when my therapist said to me, how does that make you feel? It was something that had happened that should have made me rather angry. And I didn't feel that. So I was aware that I didn't have any feelings. I was like, that's kind of strange, or that's kind of odd that I'm not angry or sad or upset with that. But when you are dissociating, you may not always be aware of what is happening. Like I said, when some of the worst things in my life were happening, I could literally, it was like I was watching it from above my body. And I can remember looking down and going, well, that kind of sucks. But no feelings, no emotion, just watching an event. Like I was watching a movie that I didn't care about the person in that was acting out the movie. That's literally how I felt. So the next thing is basically just your connection level. So when you are emotionally numb, you have an emotional shutdown. So you just don't feel this, again, the anger, the sad, the joy, the happy. You don't feel the emotions. Whereas when you're dissociating, you have a mental disconnect from the reality, from yourself, and sometimes from time. So while they're both survival strategies triggered by trauma or overwhelming stress, for adult children of alcoholic and dysfunctional families, often there is pretty specific reasons that you become emotionally numb. And those are the things I'm going to talk about because those are the things that we talk about in my course, in my class, in my coaching, in everything. So these are the things that we talk about. And I want to get to kind of these root problems. And so you can kind of understand why maybe you don't have intense emotions like you should or think you should. And I want to remind you while you're listening that if you don't feel emotions or you haven't felt emotions in a long time, it is not your fault. You are not broken, and you can definitely, with some work and some help and some support, you can start to feel those emotions again. Because the only thing worse than an emotion, a bad emotion, is an emotion that is stuck inside of your body, screaming to get out. So what are some of the reasons that we as adult children of alcoholics develop this emotional numbness? One is just the coping of the chaos and the unpredictability. So a lot of times if there was alcoholism, if there was addiction, if there was joblessness and homelessness and abuse and neglect, there wasn't a lot of difference between emotions and behaviors being simple. So there wasn't a consistent reaction to these emotions. So it was very, very, very unstable. So what happens when things are unstable? Let's say one day I come home and I'm happy and I get a good reaction. Well, that's okay. I can feel that happy. But then what happens if I come home the next day and I'm the same amount of happy and I get in trouble for it? All of a sudden I learn to suppress that because I don't know the reaction I'm going to get. I don't know if it's going to lead to punishment. I don't know if it's going to lead to rejection. I don't know if it's going to lead to further instability. So I learned to suppress the emotions. I can remember getting in trouble sometimes for being happy just as much as I got in trouble for being mad or sad. So as a child, you can't process that. So you tuck it away and you suppress it and it's safer not to feel any emotions. The other thing is a lot of children that went through these dysfunctional households suffered some pretty severe chronic emotional neglect. So if I, for instance, knew that being sad when I needed something, that is a primal need, right? You cry, you get supported, you get comforted by your parent. But let's say for years I cried and I didn't get the validation I needed. I didn't get the hug. I didn't get the love. I didn't get the support when I cried. It leads to a disconnect from your own emotions because you know they're not going to get validated or seen or heard anyway. So, like to me, it didn't do any good to cry. Didn't do any good to be sad or mad or stomp my feet or do all those things that is normal for a child to do when they're having emotions because they were never seen. They were never talked to about. I was never told not to stomp my feet, not to growl, not to yell or scream. It just wasn't acknowledged at all. So none of those emotions made a difference. Expressing those emotions did not change anything in my life. So I just decided, I guess I'm not going to do it. The next thing is the fear of vulnerability. So when you grow up in an abusive environment or one where there's just a lot of emotional neglect, it feels dangerous. So sometimes expressing, like I said, if I would express anger, I might get spanked or I might get put in a closet or I might get yelled at. And you don't want as a child to feel hurt, neglected, judged, wrong. You want people to like you, right? So you mask those true feelings of emotions, basically to have a feeling of control or to avoid drawing attention to yourself, even. So it was really a fear of vulnerability. So I knew if I didn't have any emotions, if I just went through life completely numb, things were okay. I didn't get reacted to. I didn't get yelled at. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get made fun of, all of those things. So it was a defense mechanism to make me less vulnerable. Now, of course, did that help? Absolutely not. Didn't help at all. But I thought it did in my mind, in my 7 to 10-year-old mind, which was still, as we know, unable to process what was going on and why these things were happening. The next thing is basically just a trauma response. And this happens a lot, especially in homes with addiction, because there's a lot of hypervigilance and a chronic stress response, which overwhelms your nervous system. So little by little, your brain it can't take so much of that overwhelm, and it literally shuts itself off. And it does that to avoid the overwhelm, to avoid the burnout, to avoid the feelings and the anger and everything that comes with it. You literally just shut down so that, again, it's your brain's way of keeping you safe. It's your brain's way of avoiding pain. The next thing, and this is huge with adult children, is that internalized shame. We have so much shame that we don't even know about when we are growing up in these households. We're told we're not good enough, we're not worthy. People had wished we were never born. If it wasn't for us, we caused all these problems. We caused these drinking problems. We caused these marriage problems. We think that we caused all of this. So there's a lot of shame, internalized shame. So avoiding emotional situations, literally what it does is it helps you avoid dealing with those deep emotional pains and those deep emotional feelings of shame. Because you figure if you don't feel anything, then it's gone. It's not there. And of course, once again, this does not help us, but we think it does in our mind. The other part about this with the emotional numbness is we have so many roles and responsibilities as a child of a alcoholic or a child of a dysfunctional family that we're forced to take on adult responsibilities. And what do adults do? Adults don't show their children how they're feeling. They don't express pain or express emotion in front of their children. They go behind the scenes and do the crying and do the yelling and do all of that so that the children don't see it. Well, if we're taking on those parentified roles, if we're being the mom to our younger siblings, or we're being the dad to even sometimes our own parents, we do exactly that. We protect the people that we are caretaking for from those emotions. So you become this constant caretaker, and in that, it leads to emotional exhaustion, absolute exhaustion. And it leads to burnout, and it leads to detachment from your own self, really. There's also this societal pressure to move on. So this goes more into what we might be dealing with now. So as adults, as children, we learn to suppress these emotions, but as adults, we don't know it's okay to express those emotions. And now so many people are telling us, hey, you don't live in that world anymore. Move on. Get over it. So we don't move on. We don't get over it. But defaulting to this state of emotional numbness, it just becomes our default state. It becomes how we live our lives on a daily basis. So those are just a few of the reasons that adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families grow up having this emotional numbness. But again, I wouldn't be me if I didn't tell you that there were ways to get over it, that there's a ways to help it and there's a ways to heal it. So, but first, I do want you to know, if you stay this way, what are the problems going to be? You're going to not be able to express your feelings. So you're going to be able to, you're literally going through life numb. And what does that do in relationships? It does not make for very healthy relationships, I promise you. Also, why do we feel this emotional numbness? Because we have suppressed all of these feelings for so long. And what does that do to our bodies? It kills them. It kills them slowly. It manifests itself in chronic stress, anxiety, depression, physical health symptoms, bad hearts, type 2 diabetes. We talk about all the things that chronic stress does to your body with cortisol levels and being in that fight or flight. And when you are numb, you have all of this stuck inside you. If you've listened to a lot of my podcasts, you've probably heard me talk about the backpack analysis. So every time you have an emotion, a feeling, a thought that you don't want to deal with, or it's too overwhelming to deal with, you throw it in your backpack, and you're wearing your backpack your whole life. Well, after 20, 30 years of doing this, you literally have thousands of things in your backpack. Can you see them? No. Do you think about them consciously every day? No. But what are they doing? They're weighting you down. They're hurting your back. They're straining your body. They're straining your psyche. They're straining your soul because they're all stuck there. They're stuck back there. And until we deal with them, they're going to continue to be stuck there. So, what are some ways that you can overcome emotional numbness? One, acknowledge your experience. Notice that you have emotional numbness. Like I said, I go back to the day that I was 26 years old and my therapist said to me, "How does it make you feel?" And I, for the life of me, could not come up with an answer. I didn't feel anything. So understand that you became this way as a response to your painful upbringing. But it's now that you're aware. What's another thing I always say? Once you are aware, it is your responsibility. If you want to be happier, if you want to go out there in the world as you, if you want to be courageous and fearless and feel things and enjoy and experience life like it was meant to be, you have to start dealing with some of those things. There's different kind of therapies and modalities that are really, really good with this. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I highly suggest EMDR. I love somatic experiencing, the moving your body. The internal family systems therapy is great. All of these things and yoga and mindfulness, all of this stuff is good. And just see what you like. Go out there, read about a few different things, read about somatic experiencing or somatic therapy, check out EMDR, go do one session. Sometimes you will resonate with something and sometimes you won't. If you need help deciding where to go or what resources, please reach out. I will help you get to anything that you need. Another thing is a lot of mind-body practices are super, super important. Again, this goes back to the mindfulness and the yoga and breath work. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to reestablish that connection between your mind and your body. And we talk about that all the time. If someone says right now something that makes you angry, you're probably going to feel it somewhere in your body. There's also journaling. Journaling is one of the absolute most powerful modalities of healing that you can use. It gives you a chance basically to reflect on your feelings in a safe and private place. You don't have to talk them out if you don't want to talk them out, just write. I talk all the time about brain dumping, and if you don't know where to start, literally just ask yourself a question. Ask yourself one question like, what am I feeling right now? And just start writing. A lot of times it's going to give you sensations that you didn't know about. It's going to give you situations and make your body become aware of even the smallest responses. So if you start writing, and you could pick anything. I could be writing about my ramen noodles right now, and I could just be thinking, oh, how does that make me feel? It doesn't matter. If I burn my tongue, do I get a little angry? Yes, write it down. If you spill them, do I get even more angry? Yes, write it down. All of these things in any situation, you can start to feel the emotions, but really write about them. So if you get angry at the grocery store at somebody that cut you off, you don't have to stop what you're doing and write about it. Go home and write about that emotion. But you will start to see the more you start to do this, you're going to open yourself up to more and more situations to write about. And you're going to start having experiences and you're going to start being able to name some of these emotions. When I first started, I didn't know what joy felt like. I didn't know what anger felt like. I didn't know really what scared was, or, some of these things, jealousy, I had no idea what that felt like because I really didn't feel anything. But as I started to explore and I started to kind of unveil some of these things, I had so many emotions, so many. And it's so liberating to live in them. It's so liberating to be angry for a second and let yourself be angry and then be able to control that and be able to come back to a place of peace because you got it out of your system. You stomped, you did whatever you had to do to get it out of your system in a healthy way, of course. I'm not telling you to go out and beat people up. But once you start being able to have an emotion and then bring yourself back to where you're supposed to be, it's so liberating. The other thing I would say is have a support system. So whether it's a coaching program, we have the group coaching with me, or it's a one-on-one session, or it's an ACOA group, or it's I don't know, any kind of group, any kind of support system where you can get together with people and be able to freely and safely express your emotions is amazing, is absolutely amazing. The next thing and the last thing I think I'm going to say is practice patience with this. You may have gone many, many years, many, many decades even without really experiencing true, honest, open, and raw emotions. Be patient. It takes time. Celebrate the small wins. Know that there is nothing wrong about feeling and let yourself feel. And remember, if you get stressed or the emotions start to get too intense or you're not really sure what to do with them, remember that every emotion only lasts about 90 seconds and then you can switch it off. So if you're upset or you're sad or you're angry or you're mad, the chances are really good that that's going to change in about a minute and a half. So sit with it, be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, be non-judgmental with yourself, and just be curious about the emotions you have. So I hope that helped. I don't know if it helped at all, but I just wanted to kind of talk about a little about it because I remember those days. I remember the days where I didn't feel anything. I could be in a situation where I should be so scared and I was so calm, cool, and collected. So I thought. I could be in a situation where people were being violently inappropriate to me and I should be angry and I should be defensive and I should be mad and I should be sad and my feelings should be hurt. And they weren't. But now they are, my friends. Now I feel, and I promise you, you will start to feel better the more you start to feel. You guys have a blessed day and I'll see you back. Bye.